Welcome back to another FPL video. This will be the team selection for Gameweek 19, where I'll discuss how I did in Blank Gameweek 18. I've only got one player left in Cole Palmer for that Chelsea versus Wolves game that will happen shortly after the time of this recording. There's a lot of injury problems to talk about, especially in the defensive line with Tsimikas Lascelles. Also, Tsimikas could be out up until March and miss some games for Greece in the qualifiers. And on top of that, Tsimikas is suspended, potentially injured, and he's an absolutely awful FPL asset anyway. But there's so much to dissect as well with my transfers that I made in Gameweek 18, which have worked out quite favourably. And also talk about the captaincy, the plans for Son and Salah when they head off to the Asian Cup and African Cup of Nations in Gameweek 21, and how do we bring Erling Haaland back around Gameweek 20 should he be available for that plum fixture against Sheffield United at home. If you've not been enjoying this video, smash the like button and subscribe for new. We are 30 subscribers away from 22,000 subscribers overall, so let's be sure to hit that milestone by the end of the year. And not only that, if this video gets to over 200 likes, there will be a trans tips video tomorrow on Christmas Day, and then the Gameweek 19 deadline stream on Boxing Day. So there's a lot of content headed your way, so be sure to plug away with the likes and subscriptions. Without further ado, let's jump straight into this video. In an ideal world, you would bench the likes of Dubravka or Newcastle defenders, which could include Trippier whenever they're away from home, because Newcastle are one of the worst teams in the division on their travels. They've only got one win all season, which was that 8-0 thrashing of Sheffield United. But in every other game, they failed to win. They concede goals, no clean sheets really, and they don't score enough. They don't get victories, and overall, they are pretty useless on their travels. But Dubravka got a save point. That was something. Unfortunately, I did bench Areola, who kept the clean sheet, got a bonus point and a save point against Manchester United to get 8 overall. So I did lose 5 points from my goalkeeper decision this week, and going forwards I think I'm going to start Areola whenever Newcastle are away from home, and that's the way I'm going to play it. But that's the thing, at St James's Park I would be quite confident of Dubravka and any Newcastle defender doing fairly well and keeping a lot of clean sheets. I didn't have much choice this week in the defensive line with Saliba and Tsimikas facing each other, and in the end Arsenal and Liverpool scored as predicted, so I didn't lose any points by benching those options, unlike those with Gabriel on their bench. But with Lascelles, he was subbed off due to injury around 38 minutes, and he's now a doubt for Gameweek 19, and going forwards I think this double up is just not viable in away matches. At St James's Park is completely fine, but now with Fabian Schär, Sven Botman, Dan Burn all available, I think Lascelles' time could be up anyway, so this could be a transfer waiting to happen. But since I've got Tsimikas and Tsimikas, Lascelles could live to fight another day, and let's say he's available for Gameweek 19 and gets a start, he's still worth including into your starting 11 just in case, because I think Newcastle could keep a clean sheet against Nottingham Forest at St James's Park. Now my other defenders included Tsimikas, who was on for 8 to 9 points overall, but then in the dying embers of that game Cameron Archer scores, and then in the 99th minute Tsimikas gets booked and he gets suspended for Gameweek 19. He's a horrific asset. Let's just be blunt about it and say it how it is. Tsimikas is pretty useless in FPL. He had obviously his moment in the sun, scoring a brace against Burnley. Ever since that, he's been absolutely awful, and I think the most he's been able to muster is 5 points after being sobbed off against Luton Town, I think it was, just before Aston Villa conceded, and he also got booked in that game. So Tsimikas is just pretty useless. I'm sorry to say it, but you got to be honest about it, and I can't wait to get rid of him. But unfortunately, I've got so many fires and transfers I want to make, bringing in the likes of Haaland back, and also maybe making some other moves elsewhere, that he could also live to fight another day. My final defender also flopped, and that was Pedro Porro. It was looking good at half-time. Spurs were 2-0 up, and they also navigated a pretty good start from Everton themselves. And overall, I think once you saw in the second half Romero being subbed off due to injury, and then Eric Dyer coming on, you feared the worst, and you're only expecting or waiting for the time Everton scored, which they did, and it could have been even more. Everton missed some really good chances, but Pedro Porro has so much attacking potential. Before he conceded, he was on for 7 points, so that just goes to show that even without assists, he can easily get into the bonus points, and I think he's a great asset overall really, so I'm happy to have bought him. Unfortunately it didn't work out this time, but he did get 8 points when I bought him in last week against Nottingham Forest, and let's see how we go moving forwards. It's Brighton away next, not that easy for Spurs. I think they'll concede, but Pedro Porro can still make up for it with some attacking returns. My midfield was pretty solid this week, starting with Heung-min Son, who I bought in as part of a -4 hit in Blank Gameweek 18. He scored, didn't get any bonus points, lost a clean sheet point, but I'm very happy to have him up until he goes off to the Asian Cup in Gameweek 21. So the timing of buying Son is a bit weird, and to be honest, I sold him around the time when he played Crystal Palace. He scored in that game and got 10 points overall, but then there has been a little bit of a dip there for the South Korean, but as he showed recently against Newcastle, he can still deliver those massive returns, and I trust him over Richarlison, which is why I went for Son, even though he's a transfer waiting to happen in Gameweek 21. Now, my other midfielder who scored as well, Jarrod Bowen, with 8 points, well, once again, no bonus points for him. That's the only kind of gripe I have with him. He's so consistent, scores in most games, but he doesn't get bonus points. He would need 2 goal contributions to ensure that he gets at least 1 bonus point, but it is what it is. He's a very solid and dependable option, and I think that's crucial, especially when you want to replace the likes of Son and Salah. Jarrod Bowen should be at the top of your list. Remember that Kudus is off to the African Cup of Nations with Ghana, so don't buy Kudus right now, even though once he returns from that competition, I think Kudus could be sensational, and I wouldn't mind doubling up on the West Ham midfield with Bowen and Kudus as well. Now, another midfielder who scored was Salah, but he also got booked and didn't get a clean sheet point, but 7 points overall for Mohamed Salah, and he was terrorising Zinchenko in the first half. I think he faded a little bit as the game went on, and he didn't have any joy against Gabriel or Saliba, but that was a pretty good game between Arsenal and Liverpool. A draw was a fair result, and Salah is always dangerous. His pace is always an asset, and until he loses that, he's going to continue scoring goals at a very consistent rate. The fourth midfielder is someone who hasn't played yet at the time of recording. That's Cole Palmer. Let's see how he does. Any return will be absolutely fine, but even 2 or 3 points, it doesn't matter. It should be a green arrow for my team, and that's the most important thing. And as long as Cole Palmer doesn't get injured or suspended, we are all good here. If he does get suspended, then things will look a bit tricky, to say the least, with my setup. But my last midfielder is Saka, who delivered 1 point after getting booked, and he was very disappointing against Liverpool. I wanted him to take on Joe Gomez and Tsimikas more often, but he didn't, kept on coming in. I think the decisions were very poor. The same goes for Martinelli on the other side, and the Arsenal attack overall were quite underwhelming, but I think it was a game for defenders. Saliba, Gabriel, Kanate, Van Dijk, Joe Gomez, probably the best 5 players on the pitch, and they were all defenders, so it wasn't really a game for the attackers. Saka is still a great option going forwards. That's 3 blanks in a row, but I think he'll bounce back and start delivering very soon. Ollie Watkins has been extremely consistent, but at home to Sheffield United, he was mass captained by millions of managers and he failed to deliver. And in his recent home games, he has been very poor. I said this in the deadline stream, and I was very tempted by Son. And towards the end of that stream, I was saying, for me, Son is probably the best captaincy option this week, with Watkins being second and Salah third. And in the end, the other two did well. They got a goal and Watkins came away with nothing. It's only a difference of 5 points if you went for Watkins over one of those 2 options, but still a bit disappointing. And Watkins, only a return against Fulham, I think, in recent home games. He blanked against Luton Town, Sheffield United, Arsenal and Manchester City. So I think with Watkins, he's a set and forget option until the end of the season, but unless he has a double game week, I would not captain him, to be quite honest with you, and it's a bit too late for that now. The last forward, though, is Dominic Solanke, probably the best transfer I've ever made in terms of immediate impact, because he scored a hat-trick, and of course, following on from what happened last week, very unfortunate for those that had Solanke, because the points got removed. He scored in that game, and he was on course for 3 bonus points, but this time round, he came back with a vengeance, and Solanke, I keep on saying this, he's one of the best forwards in the game, apart from Haaland and Watkins. I think Solanke is easily third, and he could be a great option until the end of the season. There's also a double game week pending, which further boosts his appeal. So I think Solanke generally has to be considered as one of the best options in the game right now. Of course, some of the upcoming fixtures aren't particularly great, but even against Tottenham and in these fixtures, he can still do extremely well. Now, unfortunately, with my plans to bring certain players in, I might have to get rid of Solanke very soon before ultimately bringing him back in. It's a question of budget and timing, and also playing around the fixtures. It's risky. I don't want to get rid of Solanke. Ideally, I would keep him for a very long time, but things change so quickly in football and FPL, and let's wait and see how this wave goes. I'm quite disappointed that I went for the Ollie Watkins captaincy, but in the end, it's still most likely a green arrow, 47 points with a -4 hit taken into account. I'm now finally into the 1,000 point mark, and I'm also around 503,000 in overall rank after substitutions are made. So it's not a great green arrow, only around 60,000 places. So it goes to show you that without Solanke, I would be in big trouble to say the least. And the captaincy also, I need to nail that down and fix my defensive issues, because that's becoming a huge concern, especially with Tsimikas now out for a couple of months. It looks like Matty Cash is absolutely useless, and as for Lascelles, I think he would have lost his spot anyway, even if he's available for Game Week 19. So there's a lot of issues starting to creep to the surface, and I need Cole Palmer to go through that Wolves game unscathed in terms of suspensions or injuries. So let's now head over to the Game Week 19 team selection portion of this video and talk about a potential transfer in the heart of the defence. It's a home game for Newcastle United, so that means Dubravka will be in the starting 11. My alternative is Areola away to Arsenal. I don't anticipate a clean sheet for West Ham United at all in that fixture, so Dubravka is quite clearly the better option in Game Week 19. But in the future, whenever he has an away game, I'll be very tempted to start Areola instead, even though West Ham aren't the greatest defensively. This will be a tricky fixture for the Gunners, but I'm starting William Saliba. I'm down to the bare bones in the defence with Tsimikas, Matty Cash and Lascelles all potentially injured, and of course in Cash's case suspended. But I think Saliba could still do relatively well against West Ham. Arsenal have the best defensive record this season, the least goals conceded alongside Liverpool, and overall I'm very confident in the Gunners in most games. But of course West Ham, London derby, and in recent games there's been a lot of goals for both sides. So I'm not so sure about this pick. And on a free hit, I don't think I'd include Saliba in the starting 11, but he's still a relatively decent option nonetheless. But I could also bring in Trent Alexander-Arnold away to Burnley. I think is a great captaincy option in Game Week 19. The only issue with this is that it makes it more difficult to buy Erling Haaland back in Game Week 20, but using fpl.team later in this video, I'll show you some plans I have to buy Trent in Game Week 19, whilst also buying Erling Haaland for a -4 hit in Game Week 20, but it also involves losing some amazing options in that Game Week 2. Now, my final defender in my starting 11 is Pedro Porro away to Brighton. If Lascelles is cleared, fit to play, and also predicted to start, I would be tempted to start Lascelles over Pedro Porro and bench the Spaniard, because I don't anticipate a clean sheet for Spurs, as I said earlier, and you're really relying on attacking returns from Pedro Porro. But in the end, I'd be very happy with this defensive line, and it's quite good considering the fact that I have so many injuries and suspensions at the back. There's a lot of discourse online about Saka not being worth 9 million, and I can understand some of the arguments. I'm not going to deny all of them. I think there is some truth to Saka not being as good of an FPL option as he should be, but he's still fairly consistent despite blanking in 3 games in a row. I'd be very surprised if that became 4 after West Ham in Game Week 19. And I look at some of the upcoming fixtures for Arsenal. I think they'll score more goals. The likes of Odegaard is looking in form, and Saka will start to get back to his best. And I think he's a very good option in general. Very consistent despite the recent run. And even West Ham, who are pretty decent, and it's a London derby, I would expect Arsenal to score a few goals in that game, and Saka is likely going to be involved because everything goes through him. He creates chances, even when he's quiet. He has that one moment of quality, and then he can get in and amongst the bonus points. So Saka is definitely a keep. Do not sell Saka, despite how frustrating he is. I promise you he will come good. I'd be very surprised if he doesn't. And if he does, that's the way football is. But I genuinely believe he will come good very soon, once again in FPL. As for Jared Bowen, I know it's going to be a clash between Saliba and Bowen, but I'm still very happy to have him. And he's the biggest threat that West Ham have, playing down the middle or on the right-hand side. I think Bowen and Kudus will be a handful for the Arsenal defence. I would expect West Ham to score, and if they do, Jared Bowen will very likely be involved as well. Now, as for Mohamed Salah, he's probably the best captaincy option, period, away to Burnley. Despite Burnley getting a great result against Fulham, Liverpool will be the big favourites to win quite comprehensively at Turf Moor, and Salah is just FPL gold, really. He's so consistent, probably the best FPL asset of all time, and that will make it very difficult to sell him in Game Week 20 potentially for a -4 hit, which I'll discuss very soon as well. My other 2 midfielders include Cole Palmer at home to Crystal Palace. There's still a great fixture run there for Chelsea, and Palmer is game-breaking value at 5.6 million. My final midfielder is Heung-min Son away to Brighton. I think there's a fixture that perfectly suits him, and if Spurs play on the counter-attack as they have been doing in some of the away fixtures, I think Son could have a lot of joy against this Brighton defence, who haven't kept a clean sheet in 33 or 34 Premier League games since a 3-0 win at the Emirates in Game Week 36 last season, which was a double game week, so time flies. But Heung-min Son is so consistent, and against Bournemouth at home in Game Week 20, I think is a great option to keep, and I would not sell him before Game Week 21. Despite being very frustrating in Blank Gameweek 18, Ollie Watkins remains a good FPL option until the end of the season, and even in fixtures like this at Old Trafford, I think Aston Villa are the favourites. Their away record is still a bit suspect, and we saw against Sheffield United how Aston Villa struggled, and in the end they dropped points against bottom of the league. So the Premier League is full of surprises. I think Man United could have a surprise in store for us, but Ollie Watkins should still be able to score or be involved in the action, whether it's a goal or an assist. He's so consistent, and it's very rare for him to blank in 2 or 3 games in a row. The final forward is Dominic Solanke, who could even be a captaincy option at home to Fulham, who lost 3-0 at home to Burnley. So it's going to be an interesting one. Solanke should be a consideration. I don't think I'll put the armband on him because for me, Mohamed Salah is the clear favourite. A bit of a spoiler alert, but there could be some alternatives elsewhere, especially in the midfield. My bench would be as follows: Areola, Lascelles, Archer, and Matty Cash. How does he do it? He just lives to fight another day. He should be sold immediately. I mean, I'd be tempted to take another hit just to not see the sight of this guy in my FPL squad. But if Tsimikas is out until March, I might have to sell him first. Overall, it doesn't really matter because I could sell both of them and they will be sold in a matter of weeks if I can find a way to do that, whilst also selling Son and Salah around Game Week 21 and buying Erling Haaland back. So there's a few things I need to do with my FPL team, and that's how the likes of Cash can survive constantly. He should have been sold a decade ago, never mind right now. But in terms of the captaincy, I am going for Mohamed Salah. Now, this season, you've seen how it's been. The most popular captaincy option has flopped on many occasions for the likes of Son, Watkins, Salah, Haaland, you name it, and it's not that simple. And I think genuinely, especially this season, we need to be more open-minded, and I'm mainly talking to myself here, and hopefully one day I'll listen. Even the likes of Solanke at home to Fulham, why not put the armband on him? I did something like that, you could say, with Watkins at home to Sheffield United, but he was captained by more than 2 million managers. So I think overall, it is worth going against the most popular captaincy option. This week, I'm still going to go for Salah, but in the weeks to come, I promise I will start to be a bit different and go against the template and the grain. If it starts to backfire, then so be it. That will put me off from ever being different again in terms of the captaincy. But I think other options we can consider include Heung-min Son away to Brighton. I think that's a fixture that could suit him. And apart from that, I'd probably look at Solanke as another great shout. He's probably in my top 5 for the best captaincy options overall, not just in my squad, but throughout the FPL game. There's a link to Drafthound in the description below. Be sure to check it out. There are so many tools at your disposal, especially if you become a pro paid tier member using my link. Everything's been updated already in terms of injuries, and they're also recommending some transfers here, and also the optimization tool. They're recommending Archer over Tsimikas, which makes sense considering the context. Jeroboam on the bench, though, I don't agree with that, but they are recommending Tsimikas out to the likes of Gavardio, and Colwill is another suggestion by the algorithm, which is also a good shout. If I decide not to go for Trent Alexander-Arnold, I think Colwill could be on the radar due to the fixtures, and it also allows me to maybe keep the likes of Salah and Son in Game Week 20, whilst also buying Erling Haaland back, and then I can start to sell the likes of Salah and Son in Game Week 21. If you look at the assistant manager tool and also the player rankings, they have the chance of a hat-trick. Erling Haaland is top still, even though he is orange flagged at this moment in time. Salah's got the highest chance of scoring. Son, Darwin, Alvarez and Saka also complete the top 5. In terms of fixture analysis, Arsenal, Liverpool and Man City are in the top 3. Then you've got the likes of Brentford and Chelsea completing the top 5. And in terms of the player comparison tools, you can see Son versus Saka. I think at this moment in time, Son is clearly the better FPL asset, but you wouldn't want to sell Saka to Son right now, considering the fact that Son will be unavailable between Game Week 21, probably until Game Week 24, maybe even Game Week 25, but he will be out for a couple of game weeks. And in terms of predicted lineups, they're all there on Drafthound, and they're always updated by the day. So be sure to check out the link in the description below for Drafthound. It's a great tool that I've been using since the summer. Let's now head over to fpl.team and I'll show you my transfer plans in Game Week 20, all provisional of course, to buy Erling Haaland back at home to Sheffield United. It all depends on the next updates we get for Erling Haaland and his fitness. If he's in the squad against Everton, does he start? Is he left out? All of that will impact what I do in Game Week 20 as well. But if Erling Haaland is available for that fixture and he's likely to start, I'm going to buy him back. And it would mean selling Salah as well as part of a -4 hit. So it would be Areola in goal at home to Brighton, whilst Dubravka faces Liverpool away. There's no chance I'm starting a Newcastle defender in that match. Pedro Porro, Trent and Saliba will be the back three. A midfield five of Saka, Son, Bowen, Palmer and Richarlison, who would come in for Mohamed Salah. And then it'd be Watkins and Haaland, who would come in for Dominic Solanke. And my bench would be Dubravka, Cash, Archer and Lascelles. And I can always buy the likes of Solanke back by downgrading Son in Game Week 21, and then in a couple of weeks' time from that, I can finally start to sell the likes of Cash and potentially Lascelles if he's still injured, or more likely, he would have lost his spot by that time. And I think that might have happened already, to be quite honest with you. The expected points with this provisional team and transfers would be 65.1. It would be part of another -4 hit, but I can always skip the Trent Alexander-Arnold transfer if Lascelles is fit and likely to play, and that could also help a little bit. But selling Salah for a -4 hit when he's playing Newcastle at home, I know the fixture isn't the easiest, but a home fixture for Salah, only one blank all season in the Premier League, that's going to be very difficult to take, and Salah could go ballistic and punish me. So there's not an easy way of buying Trent whilst also keeping Son and Salah in Game Week 20. Ideally, I'd sell them in Game Week 21, but you have to think about these things. And also with Salah, he could be unavailable for longer than Game Week 24, by the way, because he could also miss Game Week 25 if Egypt go on to win the African Cup of Nations. And not only that, Liverpool could blank in Game Week 26 should they reach the Carabao Cup final, which is very likely indeed. So we could be looking at Salah returning to our FPL squads in Game Week 27. So there's a lot to think about here in the future. I'll keep you updated with blanks and double game weeks in the future. We don't know much yet, but of course there are some things that look very likely to happen, like Chelsea and Liverpool blanking in Game Week 26 should both teams reach the Carabao Cup final. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe for new. Let's try to get this video to the 200 likes and let's keep on pushing towards 22,000 subscribers and beyond. We're only 20 subscribers away from that milestone, so let's hit that by the end of the year. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check all the other links in the description below for the Patreon, Championships Discord server, the FPL League, and Drafthound, as I showed you a few minutes ago. I wish you all the best of luck for Game Week 19 and the rest of the season, and I'll see you next time. Have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.